Thank you so much. It's thank you. It's just fantastic. I can't see you guys now, but I know you're there because now I've got my presentation in front of me. But thank you so much, Belinda, for inviting me. I would far prefer to be there in the flesh, and hopefully I will at some point down the track meet you or some of you, because I've got big plans to bring my business over to the UK, which is how I came to have the great privilege of meeting Belinda. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. Fell into adventure, and it was through a crisis time in my life. And then I'm going to sort of touch on then how that unfolded into this program that has reached out to over 60,000 women, and then tell you a little bit about the research which Belinda alluded to. So thank you very much, and I'm going to go next slide, please. So that's me there about 20 years ago, and it was the beginning of my adventurous life. This is in Argentina. I first fell in love with adventure quite by accident, and it was in the year 2000, and it was on a failed attempt, a very big failure, big fat fail it was, to climb the highest mountain in the Southern Hemisphere. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Mount Aconcagua, also pronounced Aconcagua by the locals. It's the highest mountain in the Southern Hemisphere, 7,000 metres high, which is nearly 23,000 feet. So pretty bloody high, a lot higher than our little mountains in Australia, and also yours. I think that Ben Nevis is a bit over 1,000. So I don't know if any of you have been to altitude, but it's pretty full on up there. I was there, as I said, sort of by accident in a way. I got invited randomly to go and do this adventure, and I surprised myself in saying yes, because I wasn't adventurous. I hadn't really even slept in a tent when I got this opportunity. But I was really there to escape what was a very distressing Sydney life, and I describe myself as being on the working mum treadmill. So some of you might know that kind of like the grind of just working and running yourself ragged. I was at the time feeling what I describe as stuck behind my white picket fence in a really disastrous marriage. I hope none of you experienced that, but I'm sure some of you will at some point. And what I realised at the time was that my impending 40th birthday, which was also traumatic, was a great excuse to take a break, a 3-week break, in fact, from my husband. And, you know, who wouldn't feel sorry for a woman facing 40? It's a big milestone, as some of you may know. Little did I know that this adventure, my first adventure at 40, would completely transform my life. And I'm going to tell you how. So next slide, please. So on this adventure, not only did I learn some things that you guys are probably expert at, perhaps, which at the time was learning how to pee in a Ziploc bag in a coffin-sized tent on the side of a high-altitude mountain without, I need to add, without spilling a drop. I didn't perfect it at first, but I got there. I also learned an interesting thing, which is that having a big, hairy, audacious goal to look forward to can brighten up even your darkest days, and that was an incredible thing to learn. Myself and my friend Annie failed miserably in this challenge. We failed to reach the top of the mountain, and of course that was a huge disappointment. We were beginners at the time, so we probably didn't deserve to get there. We did get over 6,000 metres high one day off our summit attempt, but it was a failure, and we came back to Australia feeling like a huge failure. But the adventure that we shared was quite extraordinary. And apart from being terrifying, we learned a lot of things. We'd feared for our lives when we got stuck in our tents in a 3-day blizzard. We survived, and this is a big one, in the same socks and undies for 2 weeks. That was pretty out there. But most importantly, ready for it? We learned how to catch our poo in a plastic bag while hiding behind a rock. And that was pretty big. That was tubes. It was just a little plastic bag like you get at the supermarket to put your tomatoes in. Anyway, a lot of you might be experienced with that, but I certainly wasn't at the time. It was quite an unbelievable adventure. We lived completely outside our comfort zone for 2 challenging, exhilarating weeks as we climbed and cramponed across the slippery ice face, gasping for breath at every single step. And you can see in this photo the snowy piece up near the top of that mountain in the centre. That was the icy, challenging part of the mountain that we got to. Next slide, please. But one of the unexpected lessons that we learned was that outdoor adventure challenges have the power to improve our mental health and maybe even rescue one from trauma. They do this by generating a whole bunch of happy hormones, which some of you might have learned about, endorphins and dopamines and a bunch of others. And they also motivate busy working people, busy mums in this case, to lift their own health up the priority list and to ensure that they exercise regularly. And this can lead to a whole lot of fun as well as healthy habits, which has become my real passion, getting people to do healthy habits. Life was never going to be the same after we'd been, I now say, unleashed. We were out. On our return, I quit my day job as a radio producer and declared to my 2 young children that I was starting a fitness business, preparing mums for life-changing adventures. Well, of course, my kids thought this was hilarious. What would you know, Mum, about fitness? But I did have a background in fitness. I'd been a phys ed teacher before I had children, and I now had a passion for adventure. So I figured, how hard can it be to start a fitness business? Next slide. After hunting around and reading a few branding books, I called my business Wild Women on Top. I know, it's a bit provocative, but it works well. The reason I called it Wild Women on Top is because that's where we wanted to be, in the wild and on top of the mountains. Every Monday night, after working all day, getting dinner, getting the housework done, and putting our kids to bed, our little group of mums would go out at night. We'd fill our backpacks with 20 kilos of stuff. We'd lace up our hiking boots, light up our head torches, and head out into the spider-infested darkness of the nearest national park. What we have here in Australia that you don't have a lot of is things that bite, things that can kill you. And in the summer, in the bush in Sydney, there's massive spiders that hang in the trees. So it definitely was exhilarating. We used our trekking poles a lot, not so much on the ground. We'd spend 3 exhilarating hours exploring the rock shelves, the cliffs and the stairs, and the rocky terrain of the Sydney Harbour Heads, stopping briefly for a cup of tea and usually a homemade cookie on a cliff top. Next slide. And then we decided that once a year we would go wild together in some far-flung corner of the planet. The higher, the better. We summited Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Kenya, Mount Fansipan, Mount Elbrus, which you probably know is the highest mountain in Europe. We'd hiked Machu Picchu and, of course, Everest Base Camp. We also climbed in honour of charitable causes, bringing awareness to funds to local charities. But we found the fundraising had quite an unexpected bonus. Not only was it really good for getting publicity in our local paper, but it also took out that many mums feel for taking time out for training and fitness and taking time out to prepare for adventure challenges. And it also gave us that famous helpers high, which some of you might realise gives additional mental health benefits to your hiking. It turned out to be a winning combination. So we got our kids involved. We took our teens up Mount Kinabalu, Mount Rinjani, and along the Larapinta Trail in the Australian desert, bribing them to keep going with jelly snakes and chocolate. We were wild women on top and just loving it. We built our confidence and strength, our power and prowess. We were part of a community that supported each other to extraordinary goals. Next slide. We developed traditions and rules that supported our group. No hike was complete without gourmet food, rich conversations, chocolate chip cookies, and, of course, great wine at the finish. We really valued the training, and we had mottos like, the fitter you are, the more fun you'll have, And we repeated these like a mantra at our 6 a.m. stair sessions, where we would climb stairs for an hour with our heavy backpacks. We encouraged our members to bring more than you take away, many things that you would prescribe to, which is leave no trace in the wild. And we followed our own golden rules, which helped our community thrive. These are all the rituals that now underpin the Wild Women on Top brand. But what I realised was this coach, trainer-led small group model wasn't commercial. I couldn't pay myself enough to survive. By then I was a single mum with 3 children. It also wasn't sustainable. I couldn't keep it going, and it wasn't accessible to all mums. It was quite elitist. It was also seen by the local tuck shop mums as being dangerous. They said you could die. And also by many people as being quite selfish and indulgent. People thought we should be home cooking and looking after our kids. Global adventure was something only a few middle-class women could afford, both in time and money. And I became really passionate about finding something for all women. I wanted to create an accessible, mum-friendly goal, a mini adventure that would entice every mum to get off the couch and into nature. So I created Coast Trek. Next slide. Coast Trek, you can see our Coast Trek is there. That's from our Margaret River event, which was last week. Coast Trek is a team trekking challenge along a beautiful coastline for fun, fitness, friends, and fundraising. Teams of 4 train together for 12 weeks and then walk, and of course, mostly women, so they talk unstoppably for up to 18 continuous hours. What could be more fun than that? From 20 women when we started nearly 15 years ago, 20 women we had 4-litre bottle of water and a few cookies, to over 60,000 people, men and women, hiking millions of kilometres in training and in 5 fabulous event locations around Australia, raising nearly $50 million and transforming millions of lives globally. And here's a little video so you can get a little taste of what it looks like. Thank you. Thank you. So over that time, in the 12 to 15 years since I first started my business, there's been a global decline in mental health. I'm sure it's no surprise to you. The World Health Organization in 2019 said there's nearly 1 billion people, including 14% of the world's adolescents. And I imagine many of you are working with those. Nearly all those people living with a mental health disorder. Depression and anxiety went up by more than 25% in the first year of the pandemic alone. I'm passionate about doing something to address this, one Coast Trek at a time. One of the secrets to Coast Trek's success is our authentic focus on nature, social connection, which I'm sure you guys share, physical activity, which most of us have in the wilderness when we're out on our adventures, and of course kindness, which underpins everything we all do. These pillars of Coast Trek are all scientifically linked to improve as well as better mental and physical health. In addition to published research, we've provided data for both qualitative and quantitative studies with Professor Ralph Buckley, International Chair in Ecotourism and Research, which has further confirmed these connections between hiking and mental health. Next slide. It was our 2021 report in Creation Research Journal titled Women Report that nature tourism provides recovery from psychological traumas that led me to meeting the fabulous Belinda Kirk, which has just been great, and my invitation to speak at this conference. This research in the form of a qualitative ethnography, that's a big word, but basically it means research that's about thoughts and feelings where you sort of drill down into people's experiences. And the ethnography means that we took the data off the internet in some way. And we used the data that we got from a private women's only Facebook group. There were 128 posts that came about as a result of an unprompted question posted by a group. She asked why members had joined the women's adventure tours and what were the effects. And it was quite striking, the comments that flowed from that one question. The responses of the women were heartfelt, and many mentioned psychological traumas, including grief, physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, relationship breakdown, and painful divorces, which mirrors both my own and many other women's experiences of the healing power of nature. Next slide. The research suggests that outdoor adventure can provide effective therapy at clinically comparable levels, which is really critical for women who have experienced severe mental ill health from trauma, abuse, injuries, or illness. And this is a benefit that's been also made famous by an American writer, Cheryl Strayed. You may be familiar with Cheryl. She wrote a book called Wild, which was also made into a feature film. And also, it's touched on by Raina Wynn in her book, The Salt Path, which I'm sure you're familiar with. This adds to previous studies which showed positive effects on mental health and well-being, either for flourishing or languishing individuals, or as a preventative or public health measure. It also opens the door for other outdoor industry to benefit commercially by adapting and marketing its products as mental health therapies. And you'll find that that was uncovered by more research by Buckley and Cooper in 2021. So it supports this idea that we can use this argument for including mental health benefits in both tourism and adventure marketing. Next slide, please. At Wild Women on Top, we've got thousands of real women's stories linking adventure with improvements in mental health. One of our favourites is Rose. Rose was married to a successful surgeon. She was a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 10. She'd been in and out of hospital for many years with depression. She'd been on suicide watch many times and had struggled to manage her illness with ever-changing doses of medication and never-ending doses of cosmetic surgery. One day, Rose plucked up the courage to join her local Wild Women community group and started hiking regularly. She entered Coast Trek, started training, and got fitter, and she started feeling a whole lot better. Next slide. When Rose crossed the finishing line of the 55K hike at Balmoral Beach in Sydney, with tears of joy rolling down her cheeks, all her family were there to celebrate. She said it was the highlight of her life. She also said, and this will really get you, she said that now when her husband calls her from work, instead of saying, "What's for dinner, dear?" he says, "You are my hero." So what is the secret sauce? What makes Coast Trek so special? The Coast Trek program creates natural exhilaration, as would many of the programs that you run and many of the things that you experience on your outdoor adventures. It motivates and supports women to get fit in nature with their friends. Exercise, time in nature, connection and giving back are all scientifically linked to elevated mood as well as improved physical and mental health. And this is something that I realized a few years into running my business and running this Coast Trek event. Coast Trek was becoming successful, but not successful enough. And I realized that we needed some research, some really good quality research specifically on our Coast Trekkers to convince the media and to convince our trekkers that there was science behind this good stuff. that the fun that we experienced on these adventures wasn't frivolous fun. It was important for our mental and physical health. So that was what led me into getting involved in academic research to underpin the brand that I had created. Next slide, please. And in case you're wondering about my first failed attempt at climbing Mount Aconcagua in the Andes, 8 years after the trip that started all these adventures, I went back with a group of highly trained wild women. And yes, we reached the summit this time, and it was extraordinary after 8 years of training and adventure to finally have achieved that incredible goal. But by that point, I realised that the summit is really only the icing on the cake. The real joy and fulfilment came from the many adventures that I'd had with our wild, wonderful women as we trained and prepared for the adventure of our dreams. The real joy came from the AdventureMind, which is why we're all gathered here today. So now if you've got any questions, next slide. Belinda suggested that I open this up. I'm not sure how the technical side works of your questions, but if you've got any questions, I'd be really happy to answer them.
Thank you, Di. I think what we're going to do is you guys ask a question and then I'm going to say it through the microphone and then hopefully Di can hear. Who's got the first question? Everyone's gone shy. Yes. How do you monetize an event like that so that you can make it happen and get an income? What, the big event, the coast trek? Did you get that? How do you monetize coast trek?
That is a great question. What a great question. Yes, it took me quite a while to work this out. Being able to monetize anything in the adventure space is difficult. The way I was able to monetize Coast Trek is through a very unique, exclusive charity partnership model that we have. So what we do is we charge our trekkers a small entry fee, which doesn't cover the whole cost of the adventure. And then we charge the charity a per trekker fee for bringing the trekker to the event, for covering the costs of the remainder of the costs of the training and the event weekend, and also for bringing donors to the charity. So it's getting a little bit complicated, but essentially we have a registration fee and then we have a management fee from the charity. And the reason we can charge the charity a management fee is because we provide an exclusive event that only raises money for one charity at a time. So our current charity partner in Australia is a mental health charity called Beyond Blue. And in only partnering with one charity, we can bring a really clear message and really engage deeply with our trekkers. And we tell them they have to raise $500 each. And they do that and some. So currently, our trekkers will raise $800 each. They do that by asking their friends to sponsor them. Not only does the charity then get the fundraising, but they also get a database of all of those donors. So I don't know if many of you know how charities work, but the main goal of a charity is to find donors to fund the charitable works. And so we bring the money and a database of donors. And as a result of that, they're prepared to pay us a management fee for each trekker that we bring into that community to give those trekkers a deep engagement, not just with what we want to do with them, which is hiking, but what the charity wants to do with them, which is fundraising and connecting with the health messaging of that charity.
Very interesting. Yeah, brilliant. I think finding ways, as you say, finding ways to make adventure financially work is a tricky one. I see that all the time. How on earth do we make this work financially? We can't just have funding. there has to be commercial opportunities as well. So that's a really interesting model. That's hopefully useful to someone else. Yes. What was the most surprising thing in your research?
I think the most surprising thing was the level of trauma that these women associated with having healings from. So they had these traumas and they went on these adventures. They weren't all hiking adventures, they were a variety of different adventures. But they actually credited the adventure with being the catalyst to the healing. And I thought that was quite incredible. It was the part of the reason the research was so special, and because the reason we got such honest answers was because these women were in a private Facebook group. So they weren't giving these answers publicly, and we did have to go through a particular privacy mechanism to ensure that we were protecting the privacy of these people. So we never had direct access to who these people were. Professor Buckley's connection was only through of their comments in these blog posts. So that gave us very rich data. And it was as a result of Professor Buckley's skills in analysing the data that we were able to measure that this was in fact equal to the clinical levels of benefit, which basically means if someone goes to see their psychiatrist or their psychologist for help with a trauma or post-traumatic stress, the research showed that they were getting an equal level of benefit from going on these adventurous activities. So I think that was really surprising.
Brilliant, thank you. Any more questions? Yes. So, good question. So if somebody wanted to do a similar research project, especially someone who's not an academic, do you mean? Yes, so if you're working in this area, you want to get more data, what would your advice be? What is it that you wish you knew now? What is it that you know now that you wish you knew at the start?
Well, I guess probably what I learned from this catalysed ethnography is that we have a whole lot of potential data at our fingertips if we or our communities are in any kind of social media community, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or there's TikTok and LinkedIn. There's many of them now. And also that people are really happy to tell you their stories. Yeah, I think that's a key source of data that you might not have considered, and I certainly didn't consider until Professor Buckley identified it, and he said, hey, it really came about as a result of an in-passing conversation where I told him that I'd seen this amazing data, and he was like, wow, we can do a whole report on that. So yeah, you can find data in surprising places, and social media is a great source of that data.
Brilliant, an opportunity. I'm not a great fan of social media, but I do realise that it has its uses, and maybe this is another one of those opportunities we need to use. Yes. Any more before I come back, because you've had one already? Zoe. When are you writing your memoir?
Once Coast Trek's gone global, then I'm going to write my memoir.
I'll be buying a copy as well. I think it'd be very funny. Yes, Charlotte. The question is the research available to read? So we will be sharing it. Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, it is. So on my little poster that I think that you guys might have got access to, there's more details there. But if you put in that, if you basically put in the name of the article and Professor Buckley and myself, it is available online.
You might be able to find it on ResearchGate, but we will be sharing it out on the Facebook group. I know not everyone's on the Facebook group, so we are going to in time find another way of sharing things. We might have a very infrequent newsletter or something. But yes, it'll definitely go out in the Facebook group. Any more research coming, Di?
Yes, there is more research coming. We still feel like we need to be more convincing and get more data, both qualitative and quantitative, speaking directly to coast trekkers. So I'm now in a very unique position where 5 times a year I have access to about 4,000 people, and I can put surveys out to those people. So we do use those surveys mostly for marketing purposes and to continue to improve the event experience that we provide for people. But there is a way to use that, and I will be doing that. We're currently, as I said, partnered with a mental health organisation, but I'm also very passionate about the physical health benefits that come from physical activity in nature. And our new partnership in Australia will be with the Australian Heart Foundation. So I'm very keen to get some data also on the heart health impacts of hiking adventures. So yes, there'll be more.
Brilliant. Maybe one more question? Any more questions? We're running fantastically to time today. Marvellous. Well, Di, thank you so much. I think we all look forward to when Coast Trek lands on our shores. Any idea when that might be? Or am I putting you under pressure?
At the moment, it's still supposed to be top secret, but I'm sure you guys can all keep a secret because we haven't yet confirmed a charity partner. But we're expecting that we'll be launching our registrations in late 2024. We think it's probably a good idea to wait a little bit till the economic outlook is a little improved to start a new event in a new location. But yes, so the first event we think will be April, May 2025. We've got a bunch of Australian women already lined up to jump on a plane and come over. And we're looking at the beautiful coastline of the Jurassic Coast. We think that's a great place to start. So yeah, very, very excited about sharing our adventures with the UK.
Well, I hope I didn't push you to reveal any secrets. You did mention it earlier.
No, I love giving away secrets.
I clocked that, so I don't feel like I've completely let the cat out of the bag. That was absolutely wonderful. You've inspired us, but also there's some good practical ideas there. If you want to contact Di, are you in the Facebook group? Have I invited you to that? Do you use
I'm
Facebook?
not sure if I'm in your Facebook group, but my email is on that poster.
Yeah.
And I'm probably pretty easy to find on Facebook as well. But my email is there on the poster. Feel free to email me. I might not answer you immediately, but I will get back to you.
Well, it's been great, and hopefully we'll see you in person sometime soon.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Diane Westaway.
Thank you. Come visit Australia.
Bye.
Bye.